Okay, good morning everyone. We are on DAF Zayin Amud Beis on the bottom. Tana Rabbanan, Mevarchin Birchas Chasanim Ba'asara Kol Shiva. Amar Rav Yehuda v'Hushabo Panim Chadashos. So we said yesterday that you make this Birchas Chasanim, which we said is Sheva Brachos, and you do it Ba'asara Kol Shiva. So we said you do it for all 7 days except when an Almon marries an Almana, we said. But this bracha, these brachas, these Sheva brachos that we're going to make, it needs to be with 10 people, and you do it kol shiva. Amar Rav Yehuda v'Hushabo Panim Chadashos. You only do it the whole 7 days. Again, for an alman and a mana, you're only doing it 1 day anyway. But for the other people, you're doing it all 7 days if you have panim chadashos, if you have new faces. And Toso says, Omar Ri, the panim chadashos ain't korei ela b'vnei adam shemarbim b'shvilam hasimcha yoser. You can't just grab some Joe Schmo, even if he's Jewish, off the street, and just say, come, have a free meal. The guy's got to add some simcha to the chas and ikal. He's got to make them happy. If a Joe Schmo off the street makes them happy, then seemingly that would be okay. V'Shabbos, Techashvinan panim chadashos da'aminan ba'god mizmor shir liyom haShabbos Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu panim chadashos bo'u lekan nemar shira. And then there's also Tosfos brings the opinion that Shabbos is also considered to be panim chadashos because everybody's happy on Shabbos, and therefore on Shabbos you would not necessarily need panim chadashos. What's panim chadashos? So Rashi says, V'Hushabo el hamishte panim chadashos b'chol yom shelo yasham edmol. Rashi says very, very interesting. He wasn't there yesterday. It sounds like, according to Rashi, that you could have the same guy act as panim chadashos every other day. It's not the Pashup Shat. But it sounds like Rashi that it's just a guy who wasn't there yesterday. So if he was there 2 days ago, then he could be panim chadashos. It's not the way we usually understand. We usually understand that panim chadashos means somebody that wasn't part of the simcha. Again, even that's a discussion. What does that mean? Were they at the wedding, but they weren't at the Suda for the wedding, or they were at the Suda for the wedding, they weren't there for benching, etc. There's a whole discussion exactly what that means. But everybody agrees you need some type of panim chadashos in order to make the Sheva brachos for the entire 7 days. Mai mevarech. What bracha do we make? This is why we love KESUVOS. Amar Rav Yehuda, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, she'akol bara lichvodo, v'yotzer ha'adam. V'asher yatzaras adam b'tzalmo b'tzelem demus tavni sovis kinlo mimenu binyana deyad Baruch atah Hashem yotzer ha'adam. Sos tasis v'sagel la'akra b'kibut anel l'tzucha b'simcha Baruch atah Hashem b'tzameach tzion b'vanea. Keep going. Sameach t'samach re'im ha'ovim k'tzamecha yitzircha b'gan eden mikedem Baruch atah Hashem b'tzameach chasan v'kala Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher bara sason v'simcha chasan v'kala gila rina ditza v'ched v'ava v'yachva v'shalom v'reyus meher Hashem Elokeinu yishma b'rei yudo v'chutzas Yerushalayim kol tzatzon v'kol simcha kol chasam v'kol kala kol mitzalos chasanim v'chupasam u'ne'ar mimisha neginasam Baruch atah Hashem misameach chasan imakala. Mazel tov. Okay, so let's go back. Again, you only need to count 6 brachos there. Why? What's the 7th bracha? Bori Piragafen. So let's see a little bit about these brachos. Let's read a little bit. Let's read this fascinating Rashi on the bottom of Zayin Amud Beis. Mai mevarich. Go back to the page before. Amar Rav Yehuda. Nira be'enai seder brachos shenizderu al iskei hazug eino ela me'asher yatzar ve'elach she'osa bracha mitchalt l'daber b'shneim. So interesting. He's saying that, again, forget about Bori Piragafen. We got 6 left. He's saying the first 2 of Shakol bara lichvado and Yotzer Adam are not really the same as the other 4. The other 4 deal with the couple. Interesting. Asher Yatzaras Adam medaber bizachar. Asher Yatzaras Adam, again, the 3rd bracha, talks about the zachar v'hitkin lo mimenu binyan adayad, and we made for him a binyan adayad, which is who? The nekeva. And therefore he's saying that the first bracha that really pertains to the wedding is the 3rd bracha of Sheva brachos, i.e. the 4th bracha. Again, forget about Bori Piragafen. I'm only going to discuss 6. So the 3rd bracha of the 6 is the one that we start really dealing with the chasan and kala. Sos tasis, and then the 4th bracha of sos tasis, lefisha anu tzrichim lahalo zichron Yerushalayim. We're in Rashi. Since we want to remember zichron Yerushalayim, what do we say? Tos tasis vitagel ha'akara. Who's the akara? The barren one, Yerushalayim. Arosh simchas seinu shenemar tidbak l'shon ilchis. We want to mention Yerushalayim. What's the next one? Sameach tisamach bracha l'chatzon v'kala sheyatzlichu b'simcha v'tov leiv. They should be happy. Va'asher bara sason v'simcha. We thank Kadosh Baruch Hu for having so much joy in the world. That's l'shem kol Yisrael. And listen to this, you may have never recognized this before. Since really the ones that pertain to the Chassan and Kala are more appropriate for a wedding start with bracha number 3/4, Asher Yatzaras Adam. That's why Lefitach Patach Ba Bebarach V'Chassan Ba Bebarach Kedera Kol Rashi Sidrei Brachos. You ever wonder why it's Shakol Baral Lechvado, Brachat Hashem L'Kem Echlam Yotzer Adam, and then you have Brachat Hashem L'Kem Echlam Asher Yatzaras Adam Mitzamo. It's a longer bracha, and it starts and ends with Barachat Hashem. Why? Because that's really the first one that deals with the Chassan and Kala. V'sos tasis v'sameach tisamach. The next two, mipnei shehein bracha smucha lechaverta lo patach ba bebaruch sheken tiknu l'chol habrachos shesmuchos achar rishonos al haseder. The next two are connected to the first one, and whenever you have a bracha that's connected to the one beforehand, you don't have to start with baruch; you just end with baruch. And it's fascinating. So he's basically saying that the third bracha is really the first bracha, Asher Yatzaras Adam. Then sos tasis, therefore, it doesn't need to start with baruch; it could just end with baruch. And also, Sameach Tzamak doesn't start with Baruch, it just ends with Baruch. So then what about Asher Bara? So he says, you're going to see a little bit later in the Gemara, which we don't seem to paskin like. But there's an opinion that holds that if you don't have Panim Chadashos, so you wouldn't say Sher Baruchos, but you would still say this Bracha of Asher Yatzar. So it needs to have a Baruch before and a Bracha afterwards, because it might be by itself. If it was never going to be by itself, it would just be connected to the three beforehand, starting with Asher Tzaras Adam, Sameach Tsamach, Sos Tasis, and then this one would just start Asher Bar without Barachat Hashem. But since sometimes we say it by itself, when there's no panim chadash, the firach ena min asmura dehutzah liftoah ba bebarach u'lisayim ba bebarach. Aval she'akol bara lichvodo ena min haseder. The first brach of she'akol bara lichvodo is not really part of the seder. It's not really for the wedding. Ela lasivas ama nesafim sham ligmo chesed. It's really to just give a bracha to the people that have come to do chesed. Zecher lechaste hamakom shenagi madam rabishon shenase lo shushvin v'nesa asigbo. We're just making a bracha to thank all the people for coming. We're giving them a bracha for coming. Vasifa zu kavod hamakom hiu bracha zu lekach nitkana. It's called shakol bara lichvodo, for God's kavod, because when everybody comes and gathers to wish mazel tov and to be here for the chassan and kala, that's the kavod of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But it's not really pertaining so much to the chassan and kala. So therefore, again, he's saying that the third bracha is really the first one that starts the Seder. That's why it's Baruch Atah Hashem. The next two are Sos Tasis V'Sameach T'Samach. They're connected. They don't need Baruch. Really, Asher Baruch shouldn't need Baruch either, but since it's said by itself, sometimes it gets Baruch Atah. But the first two are just short brachas, because again, they're not officially, they're part of the Shever brachas, but they're not as appropriate for the Chassan and Kala as the other four.
You know, the tune of the last bracha, Asher Yatzar, it almost, it's like the Minhag Yisrael is echoing, because it sounds like the Baruch Atah Hashem is almost secondary, and then
interesting.
So
interesting. That's interesting. Okay, interesting point. Umishas asifa. So now he's going to say something very interesting. And also, v'yotzer Adam is when he created Adam. Umishas asifa hi re'uya levarich. Really, you can make this bracha of shakol bara lichvado, not even under the chuppah, when everybody just comes together. Like they should bang on the bima before they start the wedding, and they say, everybody's here, let's make the bracha of shakol bara lichvado. Why do we not say it? Elamikevan sheish bracha ala kos hiskukua lesadra lav mide to have a birchas besamim birchas ala or b'motzei Shabbos. Damrinan Revi mefarsim v'chozer v'sodan al kos v'chiyah mechansan hoel v'yesham kos. Interesting. So he's saying basically that really you could have made this bracha shakol bara lichvodo, and we're going to get to Yotzer Adam in a second, that he created man. You could have made the shakol bara lichvodo. It's for the, if it's for the wedding party, you could have made it when everybody got to the wedding at the smorgasbord. Why'd you wait to do it under the chuppah if it's not officially part of the shever brachos like the other ones are? Because l'maisa we're saying once we're going to have a kos under the chuppah, and we're going to do it under the chuppah with grape juice, just like by Havdalah you could really do the besamim and the or by itself. You don't need a kos there. So too here, once you have the kos, we want to do it with the kos. So we do this one with the kos underneath the chuppah, even though we could have done it earlier, just like we do the besamim and the or with the kos at Havdalah, even though we could have done it earlier. Well, if she'ena mishar seder habrachos v'kula hoda achas lo chasmu ma bebaruch midid have a birchas peros mitzvahs. Again, just like he's saying that the first two are not officially part of the ceremony, but we do them. Therefore, they don't have the baruch before and after. It's just a regular bracha like Borei Pira 8, where you just have a short bracha. They're all part of one idea, and you say them. Now, v'chein birchas yotzer adam shetiknua liyitzira rishona shel adam arishon, the one that they made for adam arishon, kidul kaman. Again, we'll get to it in a second. Go down a few things. That's not really part, again, we say it because we need man to have the marriage, but it's not really part of the shever brachos like the other four are, because that's only dealing with the man and not the woman. Etc. And now we'll see the Gemara why we even say V'yotzer Adam at all. But that's what the Gemara says. It's a fascinating Rashi, that the first two are really separate than the other four. That's why you have the Baruch Atah Hashem. If you never thought about it, you say Baruch Atah Hashem before Yotzaras Adam and at the end, because that's really the first of the Shever Brachos, which is now only the 4 Brachos. The other 2 are Brachos Asmucha Lechavert, or the other 3 are, and therefore they don't need to start with Baruch. However, Asher Baruch starts with Baruch because, again, sometimes it's said by itself. But the first 2 officially don't have to even be said under the chuppah. But once we're doing it with a code, so we say the first 2 under the chuppah. But really, those are not as much part of Shever Brachos as the last 4 are.
Could be also the reason why often they just call one person to do both brachos.
Well, that's for Piragafin.
Well, that's a separate thing. That's when they call both, right? That's when they call Bori Piragafin. But I've seen people break up Bori Piragafin and the first bracha too, the second bracha too. But the minhag seems to be to do Bori Piragafin and the next one also.
I once saw someone make the Bori Piragafin and he drank the wine. He started to anyways. It's not.
Levi ikla lebei Rabbi behilule de Rabbi Shimon Bray. So Levi went to the house of Rabbi for the wedding of Rabbi Shimon, his son, the son of Rabbi. Baruch Chamesh. So Levi made 5 brachas, and Rashi says he left out again. When we say 5, we mean 6. When we say 6, we mean 7, because we're not talking about Baruch Piragafin. Chamesh. Which one did he leave out? Rashi says Yotzer Adam. He left out. Ravasi ikla lebei Ravashi behilule de Marbray Baruch Shis. He said all 6 of them, including Yotzer Adam. He created man. Again, man is only man. Lema Balkami. So what's the argument? Why would you leave out Yotzer Adam? So Rashi quotes that there's a machlokas in the Gemara in Eruvin whether God created one person or 2 people. I.e., did he create one person, which is a fascinating discussion by itself. According to one mandam, he created one person and he had 2 faces, or she had 2 faces. The front was a man and the back was in the keva. And the other opinion holds that no, God created man. What?
Like a Siamese twin.
Well, not even a Siamese twin. It's like the same face had the back was.
No, but I meant joined from the back.
It sounds like the whole back was a woman and the whole front was a man. And if you sort of cut them just in half, you'd have a man and a woman, like they were back to back, together. That's what it sounds like. And then the other opinion says no, that there was one person who was created first, man, and we took from his, Rashi says interesting, we took from his tail. That's not necessarily the way that we understand Zana. We took from his tail and we created woman. So again, let's just think this outside for a second. So if you say that there was one and that they just separated them, but it was man and woman together, so then one can suggest what? One can suggest that you would leave out Yotzer Adam, because it was only Asher Yatzaras Adam Mitzamel B'Tzelem Demus Kavni. So it was one creation. If you say Yotzer Ha'Adam, and then he went and took and made another Yetzirah, made another creation basically, and then created woman, then you'd have 2 brachas. First you created man, and then you went ahead and created woman. So maybe that's what they're arguing about. The one who says that you would say Yotzer Adam holds that really he created man first, and then he took and created woman from man. The one who holds you wouldn't say Yotzer Adam would say that Asher Yatzaras Adam Mitzamel would accomplish both of them, because again, he created one being with 2 of them together.
Is Adam always meaning man as opposed to...
Adam, we're talking about Adam, the first man of mankind.
It's male.
No, so again, Adam, according to the way we're learning, is Adam and Chava were actually, Adam is really Adam and Chava together. And when it says that he took seemingly it says that when he took and he made woman, it sounds like, according to that pshat, he took a saw, or a very fine saw, and just cut the pieces in half, and now you had 2 creations, but it was only one creation. He did one creation, then he just split them, as opposed to making one creation and having to take a piece of him and make another creation.
Well, apparently, according to that Mendel, the female side was not awake until after he created it.
Okay,
split it,
maybe. Interesting. It's still pretty cool. Fine. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the pshat. And again, this is not the way we usually understand it. But he's saying everybody agrees there was only one Yetzirah, that he made them and the woman was in the back and the man was in the front. So then why would you say Yotzer Adam according to that Mandamer, the one who said 6? Because everybody agrees that it was made one, but they also say that God originally wanted to do 2. So do we go based on the machshava that he had, that he was originally going to do 2, he was going to create Adam and then take from Adam and make another person, woman? Or do we go based on what he actually did, which he only made 1, and therefore you would only have 5 brachas? We see that God made Adam in his image, and then it says Zachar u'Nekeva Abraham. So did he make man, or did he make Zachar u'Nekeva? So we say originally he wanted to make them Zachar u'Nekeva, and at the end he made 1, as you're you're saying Adam, but Adam means one, male and female together, and then he went ahead and split them. So again, it's just a machlokes of whether we're going to say the extra Yotzer Adam based on what the machshava was, but everybody agrees that Lamaisa, he only made one creation and then split them up. Rav Ashi iklo lebei Rav Kahana. So Rav Ashi went to the house of Rav Kahana. Yoma Kama Baruch Kulu. On the first day, right, we said according to everybody, even for an Amon and an Amon, you make all Sheva Brachos the first day. Mikan ve'elach, iyika panim chadashos, Baruch Kulu, v'ilo, afushe simcha be'amahu. So we said, obviously, as we said in the beginning, we said that if there's no panim chadashos, then you would not say the Sheva Brachos after the first day, even for regular people, not an Amon and an Amana, even for two Bisulim. But if there are no panim chadashos, we still have an extension of the simcha. What does this mean? And we don't pass like this. But he held that even if there's no panim chadashos, you won't say the whole shever brachos. You would still say mivarach shas simcha b'moano. Right? We do this at a wedding. We say mivarach shas simcha. I think we do this at shever brachos also. Right? In shever brachos, I sign mivarach, and then you say mivarach. But again, seemingly we only do that, I believe, I could be wrong, but I think we only do that even when we have panim chadashos, when we're doing the shever brachos too. But the Gemara here paskins that you do shever brachos when you have panim chadashos. When you don't have panim chadashos, during the 7 days after the wedding, you would still say shas simcha b'moano, which we might still do, again, even without panim chadashos, va'asher bara. And this is the chiddush, which we don't do. Even if you don't have panim chadashos, you would still say the bracha of Asher Yatzer. And again, that's based on what we said before. That's where Rashi gets this idea that the Asher Bar needs a baruch before and a baruch after.
If we don't have panim chadashos,
we don't say anything.
We don't say the last one.
We do say Asher Bar?
The last, the big Sheva bracha. Yeah.
We do?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. So then we do pass like this, but it's not brought down the halacha over here. There's no ein mishpat near mitzvah in it. So that could be the halacha. I'm not sure. But he holds that if you don't have panim chadashos, you would still say shas simcha b'moano in the beginning of benching and asher bara at the end, but not the rest of them. Mishiva v'yat shloshim, from 7 until 30 days. Bein amar lehu machmas hilula, bein lo amar lehu machmas hilula, mevarach shas simcha b'moano. Very interesting. If you have any type of dinner with the chassan and kala from 7 to 30 days, whether you're inviting people because we're still celebrating the wedding or we're just having a dinner together, you would say shas simcha b'moano in benching. Again, in the beginning of benching, from 7 to 30 days. Everybody's still happy until 30 days. Then, I don't know. Okay. Mikan ve'elach.
That's your love? We do it?
Again, I didn't think we did the other thing, but I don't think we do this either. Mikan ve'elach, from 30 days and on, if you're really a party animal, and you're getting together with the chazan and kala, even after 30 days, you would still keep going and say shasimcha b'moano. Wow. So the Gemara says, let's say on the 40th anniversary, you're still getting together and reminiscing and saying we're still excited for the wedding. Do you still say shasimcha b'moano? No. Amar of papi mishmei derava atreser yar cheshat. You can only be happy for 12 months. That's what I meant to say. Then it's all downhill. You can only be married for 12 months.
Well, the chassan is called chassan for 12 months.
Right. Also, that's part of the thing, that he goes out to war, etc. But you can only be saying you could be happy the rest of your life, Mir Hashem. But you can only say shasimcha b'moano for 12 months. Umei kara me'emas. When do you start saying shasimcha b'moano? That's interesting. The Gemara implies that there would be a time even before the wedding that you would say shasimcha b'moano. When would you say that? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa michiramu share be'asinta. Says Rashi, 4 lines on the bottom. When you start putting the barley in the water to make the beer, once you start making the beer for the wedding, that's when you start saying shasimcha b'moano. Another opinion is that they would actually plant barley in a pot, and therefore the barley would grow, and they would say, you, the chassan and kala, should be able to multiply like the barley in the pot. So once you did this barley, once you started making the beer for the wedding, that's when you start saying shasimcha b'moano, seemingly even before the wedding comes. Ini, is that true? We see that Rav Papa started making the bracha shasimcha b'moano even earlier, even by the Erisin, which was a year before the wedding. Nobody starts making a beer a year before the wedding. Shani Rav Papa dahabi tareach le. No. The reason that Rav Papa started saying is because he was tariach, and Rashi explains he was very wealthy. And it seems like what comes out from Rashi is, why would you not say shasimcha b'moano? Because there's a chance that the wedding is going to be broken off. Once you know the wedding is for sure going through, then you start saying shasimcha b'moano. The chassan might not like the kala, but once you start making the beer, nobody's turning around. So Rav Papa, the same thing. Rav Papa had so much money that what? Usually, what was the reason that they would break off the wedding? Because of financial problems. They wouldn't be able to afford, they wouldn't be able to come. This one wants this one this band. Okay, it's all gone. Silly stuff, but it happens ma'aseh b'chol yom, unfortunately. But Rav Papa had so much money and everything was already prepared for the wedding beforehand, even from the Shas Eresin, so there's no financial worries there. If there's no financial worries, then the wedding is definitely going to go through, and therefore we could start saying Shasimcha b'mono, not only from when we put in, again, it makes sense with the beer now, not before we even put in the financial investment of the beer, which we're not going to turn around anymore. Even beforehand, from the Shas Eresin, we're going to say Shasimcha b'mono, because there's no way that they're going to break it up. Unfortunately, it's not always true. Ravina Yasek Le Lebrei Beirav Chavira. Ravina made a shidduch with his son for the Beirav Chaviva. Ubeirach Mishas Eresin. They started saying Mishas Eresin. Amar Kimle Begavai Delo Hadribu. Nobody's breaking up with my son. Lo Istayim Ilsa V'Hadribu. Unfortunately, they broke up with his son, and they said Shasimcha b'mono for no reason. Okay, so you see that there were broken engagements at the time of the Gemara as well. Rav Tachlifa Bar Marava from the west. Where's that? Eretz Yisrael. Ikla leBavel. He went to Bavel. Baruch Shis Arichta. He said six Arichtas. What does that mean? He added Shakol Baral Chado and V'Yotzer Adam. He added more words to them because again the other four are pretty long. The other, so the first two, Shakol Baral Chado, V'Yotzer Adam, which we said are not officially part of Shebach, because they are, but they're not as connected to Chas and Akala as the other four. But he had a different nusach, and he would say that a longer nusach, seemingly with Baruch before and Baruch after, even for Shakol Baral Chado and Yotzer Adam. However, less Hilchas Kavas. Rav Chaviva Ikla Lebei Mehula. What's a Bei Mehula? Mahol. He went to a bris. Baruch Shasimcha b'mono. He said Shasimcha b'mono, but less Hilchas Akavase. The halach is not like him. You don't say Shasimcha b'mono at a bris. Why not? Mishum detride de islay tzar linuk. Everybody's very stressed because there's a lot of tsar for the baby. But seemingly it would be appropriate to say Shasimcha b'mono, that happiness is in God's abode at a bris as well. There is a discussion I saw brought down by a pidyon haben. Would you say it by a pidyon haben? Because seemingly the baby is not in distress unless you hold that holding the guy on a tray with money all around him is distressful. But assuming that with all the jewelry and everything, but assuming that it's not distressful, maybe one should say Shasimcha b'mono at a pidyon haben. Maybe one should say it at a bar mitzvah and other simchas as well. But a simcha b'mono, you would not say at a bris because they're tsar to the baby. Amar of Nachman Amarav. New topic. Chasanim min haminyan ve'ein avelim min haminyan. You could count a chasan for a minyan, you can't count an ovel for a minyan. That's not true. We know that we count an ovel as one of the 10, so we'll have to see what does this mean for a minyan. A minyan for what? Meisve chasanim v'avelim min haminyan. So we see everybody agrees that a chasan can be counted for a minyan. Fine. Seemingly, for our discussion, he can be counted as one of the 10 for the Sheva Brachos. You don't have to have 10 other people besides for him. You have to have 9 other people, 9 other men besides for him. But what does that mean? An Avel can or cannot be counted for a minyan. So Masnisa Karamis Alad Rav. So the Gemara first says, you can't ask me a kasha from a Bryce on Rav. Why not? Rav Tana, who Palag, Rav's a Tana, so you can't bring a kasha. Idmar Amar Rav Yitzchak Amar Rav Yochanan. You want to ask a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, who's an Amora. Rabbi Yochanan says, Hachatzim min haminyan ve'ein avelim min haminyan, meisvei chasanim v'avelim min haminyan. Fine, you can ask a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. So again, we have one brisa, both of them agree that chasanim can be part of Sheva Brachos, seemingly. But you have one opinion that says that Avelim cannot be part of a minyan, and the other one says that Avelim can be part of a minyan. So what are we talking about? So Gemara says, Kitanya hi b'mirkas hamazon. Interesting. It's not necessarily as part of a minyan. Rashi even says Lisaris begimel. Rashi's a little bit tough to say because Lamaisa it's not a minyan. But maybe we would say a minyan to have 10 there. Okay, I think Tosfos raises this point. But bebracha mazon, where do we say that an avel can be counted as part of a minyan? That's Lisaris begimel azam nilav sharei chai b'chol mitzvos. You know an avel is chayv in all the mitzvos, right? An avel can't learn Torah, he can't do certain things, but he's basically chayv in all the mitzvos say or in all the mitzvos I say. It's a little bit different during Aninus. He's not chayv in any of the mitzvos. Once he becomes an avel, so once he starts Avelus, once he starts Shiva, he's Chaim in all the mitzvahs. So when it says that he could be counted for a minyan, so it means that he could be counted as one of the 3 for Birchas Hamazon. Kika'amar Rabbi Yochanan B'Shura. When we say that he can't be counted as a minyan, he can't be counted as one of the 10 for the Shura. And Rashi says, Kishayu Chozim in kever, similar to what we do today, when they're coming back from the kever on the second line, Osin Shura, Saviv Ha'avel Anachamo, a little different. There they did it around the Avel. We do like a line that he walked through. Umoshivan Aso Ala Aretz, they put him on the ground, Vehein Obdim Saviv, and that Shura, after they do the burial, that Shura of people has to have at least 10. And he cannot be counted as one of the 10. So you need 10 other people. It's not even clear that you need 10 other men, but you need 10 other people besides for the Avel, and that's what it means that the Avel is not Min HaMinyan. So he is Min HaMinyan, he can be counted for Birchas Hamazon as one of the 3, as one of the 10 to say Elokeinu. But when it says he's not Min HaMinyan, he can't be counted as one of the 10. I never heard of this halacha before, that you need 10 people to make the shura. Again, seemingly we do it even without 10. But anyway, we hope to have 10 and 10 men to be able to say Kaddish. But it seems to be saying that you need to have an Avel, you need to have 10 other people besides an Avel in order to make the Shura that he walked through after the burial. Yes, there was a question.
Yeah, when you say Avel, You're talking about during Shiva?
An Avel is after the burial.
Yeah, but I mean, and all the rest of the year Avel?
No, we're talking about an Avel during the Shiva. Yeah. The Ella, what's the problem with this suggestion? That we said what? If you look at the back of if you look back on the page, we said chasanim va'avelim min aminim, but you'll see over here, ve'elaha, it's not so clear because the Amar of Yitzchak Amar Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan didn't just say that an Avel can be part of a minyan. Mevarchin birchas chasanim ba'asara ve'chasanim min aminim. Now it's clearer. And this seems to answer that we weren't necessarily talking about benching or whatever. We'll see in a second. Mevarchin birchas chasanim ba'asara ve'chasanim min aminim. We're talking about shever brachos, and a chasam is part of the minyan, and we said that everybody agrees to that. Ubirchas avelim ba'asara. And that's why we're going to say that it can't be a shura. Because again, it's not talking about the counting him for a minyan stam. It's talking about counting him for the birchas avelim. The ein avelim min haminyan. Bracha b'shura miyika. It can't be your suggestion about counting him for the shura, not as one of the 10. There's no bracha by a shura. And what we're talking about is that one thing says that you count him for a minyan, for the brachas, and the other thing says that you don't count him. Ela ki ka'amar Rabbi Yochanan birachava. So again, we see over here that the Brisa says chasanim va'avelim min haminyan. So we said that chasanim and avelim are min haminyan. So we said that could be talking about birkas hamazon, and that could be talking about the shura. The problem is that Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Yochanan doesn't just say that you count avelim min haminyan, that you can't count avelim min haminyan. He's saying you can't count avelim for the birchas avelim. So that's not by the shura. That can't be talking about the shura because by the birchas avelim there is no bracha by the shura. So what's this talking about?
What's the brachas?
So we're going to see in a second. So he says, Ela kikyomer of Yochanan birachava. That's by the rechov. That there's a bracha that you say by the rechov, and you need 10 people besides for the avel to say that bracha. Rashi, kishem mavrin es ha'avel suda rishona, right? The suda savra, which is the first suda you eat when you come back from the cemetery. Mishal acherim, you eat it from other people. Other people are supposed to give it to you. Amina moed katan hayu mavrin oso birachava. They would give him a meal in the street. Umevarchin sham birchas avelim. They would actually make these birchas avelim when they would give him the first meal in the street. Baruch Menachem avelim. As we'll see in a few minutes in the Gemara, there were these brachas. And what Rabbi Yochanan is saying, that an avel cannot be counted for the birchas avelim, he's talking about that these brachas that they said in the street when they were giving him his suda savra, the first suda when he came back from the cemetery, he cannot be counted as one of the 10. And you need 10 people besides for the avel, and seemingly 10 men besides for the avel, in order to make the birchas avelim birachava. Ve'alahadam Rav Yitzchak Amar Rav Yochanan mevarchin birchas chasanim b'asara kol shiva v'chasanim min aminu birchas avelim b'asara kol shiva avelim min inyan bircha birachava kol shiva miyika. So you found me where there's a bircha, where there's a bracha that the avel is not going to be counted in, but it didn't just say that there's a birchas avelim b'asara. It's birchas avelim b'asara kol shiva. We don't make that bracha all 7 days. Gemara says no. Mishkach zav b'pan chadash eina chanami. There's a birchas avelim that they say when he comes and he has a suda savra, and there's also a birchas avelim that anytime there's panim chadashos, which are almost always is panim chadashos that come to pay a shiva call, a new person every day. Anytime you'd have panim chadashos during the shiva yemei avelus, you would make these birchas avelim again and again. The thing that we're learning here is that the avel is not counted as one of the 10 for these birchas avelim, which are seemingly said throughout the shiva. The first day for sure at the suda savra, and then anytime a new person comes to the shiva, anytime you have a new panim chadash to the shiva, you would make this birchas avelim. And again, what we're learning here is that the avel, according to Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the avel would not be counted as part of the 10. You have to have 10 separate people in order to say these birchas avelim.
The birchas avelim is the Shem Malchus.
Again, seemingly it's B'Shem Malchus, as we'll see in the Gemara down on the bottom over here. Okay, a few more minutes.
Here he says that actually they would come with another meal during the time, and to make just like the first time was in this.
Every day they would come. It's not just panim chadashos; they would come with a new meal every time.
Right.
Okay, that could be this. It sounds silly. That could be the source. We do have. It's not a. It seems to be a minhag that we make meals. Seemingly, it's just psychologically to help them. But according to what you're saying, it actually has a source in halacha that there seems to be an Indian to make a meal and bring the meal and say this birchas avelim, which we don't seemingly say. But that's very interesting, Be'iri. Now we're going to talk about and figure out what this birchas avelim is. Rav Chia bar Ava was the makrei b'nei Reish Lakish. He was the Chumash teacher of Reish Lakish's kid, Hava. V'amilei masnei b'rei Reish Lakish Hava. And other people say he was the Mishnah teacher of Reish Lakish's kids. Shachiv le Yenuka. And Rav Chia bar Abba lost a child. Yom HaKama lo atzol legabe. Reish Lakish didn't come the first day. Again, there seems to be a halacha that you're not supposed to go to pay a shiva call the first day, maybe even the first 3 days. We are not as machmir about this, but he didn't go the first day. Lamachar, on the second day, Dabre li Yehuda bar Nachmeni meturgamane. So he told his meturgaman, He had a shliach. He had a person who would speak for him, his spokesman. Amar le, Reish Lakish said to him, Kum ema milsa kol kabil yenuka. Go say something nice to Reb Chia bar Abba. Go give him divrei nechama over the loss of his child. You'll never believe what he said. Pasach v'amar, and it's only funny because people talk like this sometimes at Shiva houses also. Pasach v'amar. He said the following pasach: Vayar Hashem vayinat mikaz banav uvnosav. God saw and was provoked from the kaas over the children. So this is what he said to him when he went to pay Shiva call. In the name of Reish Lakish. Dor she'avos menatzim lakadosh baruch hu. You know why your son died? Because you're part of a generation that provoked God. And since you provoked God, God is punishing you for having sinned, basically. That's what the Shiva call was. And again, it sounds crazy. This is, people don't say it b'pel mali, but people say pretty dumb things at Shiva calls. We'll talk about that this coming Shabbos, Mir Tashem. Ve'ika di'amrei, and there are those who say that it wasn't that he just said that pasuk, that the guy was actually a bacher havav hachikam rei. No, if you thought that was bad, the guy was actually who passed away was a bacher, and he said the following thing to him. He quoted a different pasuk: Al keina bachurav lo yismach Hashem. God will not be happy with your bachrim. Ves yisoma ve'asav menosav lo yirachem. He won't have any rachmanos on the yisoma and on the amanos. Ki kolo chanei v'meira v'cholped dover nevela. Because you're all hypocrites. And you all speak nevela. I'm not going to go back on my anger, and I'm going to go ahead and have a stretched hand. So again, he went to him, and this was a Shiva call that he made, i.e., in other words, you deserve this, you sinned, you're bad, you're hypocritical, and you got what's coming to you. Okay. So let's just finish this pasuk for a second. The Gemara interjects for a second. It says, "Mai ve'od yado netuya." What does it mean that God's hand is still stretched? Amar Rav Chanan barav hakoyodim kala lama nismacha l'chuppah. Everybody knows what a kala does the night of her wedding. Very interesting. What does she do? She has bia for the first time. Listen to this. This is fascinating because sometimes people joke, and after you read this Gemara, you would never say another thing about even inference. Ela kol hamenavel piv. What it means when it says God says my hand will still be stretched. Which Rashi says in our case means if you start talking, even joking about what a kala is going to be doing the night of her chuppah, even if you're supposed to get 70 good years, a full life, shivim shana, it'll be changed to ra. Never infer or make a joke about anything, and about it's inappropriate anyway, but never infer or make a joke about anything with a kala and what she'll be doing the night of her chuppah, because even if you have 70 good years, the whole thing can be turned l'ra. Rashi learns that it's from the word va'od is va'ed, and le'olam va'ed for a person is 70 years. Va'od yado nitiyah, God's hand is outstretched, and he can change it all in 1 second if you even make one inappropriate comment about a kala the night of her wedding. But the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question. This was just an interjection. But now the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question about what Reish Lakish's spokesman went and said. He went and he told him to go ahead and pay a Shiva call, and the guy is like giving Rav Chia bar Abba tsar. What kind of thing is he saying to him? So he's fascinating answer. Fascinating. And again, don't try this at home, because it doesn't usually work. But he's saying that he knew that Rav Chia bar Abba was a big tzaddik, and what he was basically saying to him was that your son died because of the sins of the generation, and you're such a big tzaddik. He wasn't saying you're a rasha, you're a tzaddik. And since you're such a big tzaddik and your son was such a big tzaddik, and we know that we sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes the tzaddikim on behalf of the generation, you should be comforted by knowing that he died because of the sins of the generation. Now again, to say that to Rav Chia bar Abba, that's a very big divrei nechama. You say that to the average Joe Schmo, and he'll look at you like you're crazy, and he'll say, I don't care, I want my son back. But Rav Chia bar Abba, who's a big Talmid Chacham, who's a big tzaddik, so in fact for him, that was divrei nechama, and that's what the spokesman was saying. That's how the Gemara explains it.
It's a nechama because he knows it wasn't for his own.
It's a nechama that he knows it wasn't for his own sake, and he knows that it was for the good of the entire.
People were saved,
and people were saved because of him, and thousands of people were saved. And again, even though a regular parent would not want to hear that, Rav Chia bar Abba, who's a big tzaddik, so he's okay and actually comforted by hearing that. Again, don't say that to a regular person. Amar le kumei mamilsa keneged shivcha shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Fine. So now that he gave him a little bit of nechama, he said something to Rav Chia bar Abba. Now go ahead and say something nice about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Go praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, this seems to be all part of the Divrei Nechama. Again, the Divrei Nechama was something else specific to that. Now we seem to be starting what these Birchas Avelim that we were referring to before was. This seems to be the beginning of the Birchas Avelim. And again, somebody asked before, but it would seem, as Rashi points out, that they would start with Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. That all of these brachas would start Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, and that's the whole discussion that you need a Sarah there, etc. Because it's not just saying a random sentence; it's really blessing. So over here, the first of the Birchas Avelim, which we're discussing, which the Avel is not counted as one of the 10, and again, which is said on the first day by the Sudas Havrah, and then seemingly if there's Panim Chadashos, it says every day of the Avelus. So what are these Birchas Avelim? So the first one is a Mishabeach La Kadosh Baruch Hu, where you praise the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Pasach ve'amar, again, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. Ha'el ha'gadol birov gadlo. This is the spokesman talking. God is great. Adir v'chazak birov naraot. He's very strong with all of his awesome deeds. Mechaye mesim b'mamaro. He can bring back the dead by just speaking. Oseh gedolot ad ein cheker v'infaot ad ein mispar. He can do wonders beyond comprehension and miracles without counting, without quantity. Baruch atah Hashem mechaye hamesim. So that's what he said, and that's part of the Birchas Avelim, and that's the part which praises God. So then Reish Lakish said, Amar Leikum Ema Milsa Keneged Avelim. Now speak to the Avelim. And again, seemingly he already gave different Nechama here, but it sounds like he's saying, now give us the bracha for the Birchas, give us the text of the Birchas Avelim for all Avelim in general. What's the text? Pasach v'amar, this is why you should say to Avelim. Again, seemingly with Baruch Atah Hashem. Unless you want to argue, Rashi's not clear. Unless you want to argue it's a Baruch HaSmucha L'Chaverta, and you wouldn't say, yeah, Rashi said Baruch HaSmucha L'Chaverta he. And therefore you would not say Baruch Atah Hashem here, because again, you're saying Baruch Atah Hashem by the first one, by the Shvach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore you would not say Baruch Atah Hashem again here, because this is the next part of the bracha. It's all one continuation. Pasach v'amar, what do you say to the Avelim? Achenu ha'miyugayim v'hamidukayim. Our brothers who are troubled and crushed. Think about the following. Again, this doesn't seem to be so comforting to me, but seemingly they felt it was comforting. What did he have to say? Realize that death and Avelus is forever. You're not the first one. Again, I don't think anybody ever wants to hear this, but seemingly, according to what they thought, this was comforting. This was a creation in the way from the beginning of the 6 days of creation. Rabim shasu, rabim yishtu. Get over it. You're not the first one that's going to drink this cup, and there's going to be others that are going to drink this cup. Just like there was a mishter for people that died beforehand, there's going to be more people that are going to die in the future. Achenu, my brothers, the people sitting Shiva, Baal Nichamos Yinachem Eschem Baruch Menachem Avelim. God should comfort you. Again, that's what the Baruch Avelim. In my humble opinion, Lefi Aniyas Daiti, it doesn't sound like the most comforting bracha, but clearly Reish Lakish, because the Gemara doesn't ask her, I come at Tsar Le, you're giving Tsar. No, it seems like this was a very big nechama for the people, and this is the text of the Birchas Avelim that you say to Avelim. Death has happened before, death will happen again, and you're only one of many people that have lost and will continue to lose. So again, one can look at it like that, or one can look at it, there are other people there that can relate, that can be there for you. People have experienced this before. Again, however you want to package it, but that's the bracha of Avelim. Amar Abaye, so Abaye just adds, and he changes to Girsa. Rabim shasu lema, rabim yishtu lema. You can say that a lot of people have drunk or drank from death before, but don't say that many more people will drink from death also. Mishta Rishonim Lema, Mishta Achronim Lo Lema. You can say that there are people that have had a Mishta to remember or to commemorate the people that have died, but don't say that there are going to be more. You can say that people have died in the past also. So you're not the first one to lose somebody, but don't say that more people are going to die in the future. Why? What? Da'amarish Lakish. Don't open up the piv to the Satan. Don't give a klala to anybody. Amar Rav Yosef, Ma'ikra, what's the source that you shouldn't open up your pet to the Satan? Because it tells us, the pasuk tells us that Bnei Yisrael said, Kisdom ayinu la'mora deminu. He says that the Bnei Yisrael says that we are worthy of punishment, just like Sdom and Amora. Maya Hadjalei. So what did the Navi say back to them? Shimu devar Hashem kitzine Sodom. Since they call themselves and curse themselves by saying we are like Sdom and Amora, so the Navi said that you are the chiefs of Sodom, and seemingly, gave Kadosh Baruch Hu more of a reason, and gave the Satan more of a reason to punish them. So he's saying you can mention, and that's part of the Nechama, that other people have died in the past, but don't say other people are going to die in the future, because that's opening up your piv l'Satan. Amalei. Kum ema milsa keneged Menachem avelim. So now the last part of the Birchas Avelim is that Reish Lakish said to the Mitorgaman to go ahead and open up his mouth for the Menachem avelim. Give a bracha to those that are coming to pay a shiva call. Pasach v'yamar. So he said, Achenu gomlei chasadim b'nei gomlei chasadim. My brothers, the people that are doing chesed, the sons of those who do chesed, like Avram Avinu hamachzikim b'vriso shel Avram Avinu, who was the ultimate gomel chesed. Achenu, my brothers that are paying a shiva call. Bal hagemul yishalim lachem gemulchem. Baruch atah Hashem mishalem hagemul. God, who is the ultimate giver of chesed, should pay you back for coming and paying a shiva call. Baruch atah mishalem hagemul. Finally, Amar Lei, the last part of the Birchas Avelim, Kum ema milsa keneged kol Yisrael. Shraga says to him, go say a bracha for all of the Jewish people. Pasach ve'amar. So he said, Ribon ha'olamim, pidei v'hatzel maled Hoshea, go ahead and deliver and save Amcha Yisrael min hadever, min hacherev, min habizo, min hashidafon, min hayirakon. Should go ahead and save them from all of these things, the pestilence and the sword and the plunder, etc. Umikol mine poranios ha'misrashos uvaos ha'olam. They basically, we end by asking God to keep us away from all tragedy, from all poranios, from anything bad that happens to the world. Terem nikra v'atataneh, not just to keep us away, but to keep us away before it even happens. Baruch atah Hashem otzer hamagefa. Blessed are you, God, who stops Magef. And again, that seems to be, these few brachos seem to be the text of the Birchas Avelim that said at the Sudas Havra, and also said when there's Panim Chadashos. Again, we don't seem to have this custom, but at least back then they would say it at the Sudas Havra, and seemingly they would say it when they would bring, maybe even without a meal, but seemingly according to Miri, when they would bring a meal, a Panim Chadashos, over the next few days of Shiva. Let's just finish with the bottom line over here. Amar Ula, some people say Ula said, and some people say it says in a Braisa, Asara kosos tiknu chachamim beis ha'avel. There are 10 kosos. Wow. So they had a takana that an avel should drink 10 cups of wine, should get a shtickle drunk. Why? Rashi says, again, not to distract him, but based on Mishlei, they should give some type of sheikhar, and you should give some type of yayin to people that are suffering. Again, seemingly it's to not like put them out, but to loosen them up a little bit so that they're not so depressed, to sedate them a little bit, it sounds like. Interesting. So what are the 10? She give 3 cups of wine during the appetizer to open up their stomach. You should give 3 during the meal to soak the food that they ate. For you should have 4 more cups. Echad keneged hazan, echad keneged birchas haaretz noda, echad keneged bonei Yerushalayim, ve'echad keneged hatov ve'hametiv. That wasn't enough. It clearly wasn't working. They weren't getting drunk enough. So they said, let's do 4 more for the Avelim. 14 cups of wine every day. What? Echa keneged chazdei ha'ir, the chazanim in the ear, not the ones who sang. Rashi says, Tiknu lehem bracha alav l'chisha yusham she'ir li sasek b'meisim v'v'shar tzachiti. But these are the guys who were the Chevra Kadisha. Baruch Hashem. We have sitting right here. Should I move the camera to you or no? No, it's okay. The Chevra Kadisha. So we would have a cup of wine in honor of the Chevra Kadisha, the people that would deal with the mace. Ve'echad keneged parnasei ha'ir. Then we would have a cup of wine for the people that would actually give the money to bury the people that had no money to be buried themselves. Ve'echad keneged beis hamikdash. We would do one for the beis hamikdash, because again, once we're mourning a mace, we're going to mourn the ultimate mace, the beis hamikdash. And finally, Echa Keneged Rabbi Gamliel. And there was 1 cup that they would drink Keneged Rabbi Gamliel. We'll see in a second what that is. Hitchilu hayishosin b'shtakin. Lo and behold, they would drink the 14 cups, and what do you know? The Avelim would get drunk. And they would start acting inappropriately. His hiru adavar liyoshna. So they went back to the original. Now, the original one can say back to the 10. I'd like to argue that it means they went back to saying, again, in others, it's a misconception. In others, allowed to drink wine. An onen can't drink wine and have meat. Between the death and the burial, you can't drink wine and have meat. But an Avel is allowed to drink wine. So they went back to Leoshna and said, okay, if an Avel wants a little bit of wine, he could have some wine. But we're not going to require an Avel to drink 14 cups. And seemingly we're not even going to require an Avel to drink 10 cups of wine. My Rabbi Gamliel, what's this cup that was for Rabbi Gamliel? Why did they drink a cup for Rabbi Gamliel? Gamliel did a great thing. Tanya, Barishona Haita Hotzas Hameis Kasha Likrov Yoser Mimisa. So it's fascinating. What did they used to do, says Rashi? They used to bury the person who died with very expensive stuff, with silk, with a royal garb. And what happened? It became that the rich people could afford it, but the poor people couldn't afford it. And therefore, what would happen? It was harder for them to bury than for them to lose the person. Because they would lose a person, that would be painful. But now they wouldn't be able to afford to bury them. So what would they do? They would have so much stress. So what did they do? They would actually leave the mesim and they wouldn't bury them because it was too expensive and it was too embarrassing that they couldn't afford the silk and the royal garb. They would leave the mesim. So what did Rabbi Gamliel do? He said, when I die, I want kli pishtan, I want linen. V'hitzio b'kli pishtan, and they would bring him out in linen. V'nagu kol ha'machav lahotzi b'kli pishtan. He started the fact that everybody goes out in linen. Amar Rav Papa, it's a discussion. The tachrilim that we have nowadays, made out of linen or made out of cotton? Made out of cotton. That seems to be Rav Papa. Amar Rav Papa, today they even do like a canvas baguette, she'eno shava eladinar, even cheaper than what Rabbi Gamliel. But again, we drink for Rabbi Gamliel because Rabbi Gamliel is the one who came ahead and made funerals cheaper. It happens to be ironic that nowadays, they don't put in the silk and the royal guard, but for some reason funerals nowadays are still thousands and thousands of dollars, and we're back to the original problem. But at least in that time, what?
Can't get you one way.
Can't get you one way, they can't get you the other way. But at least back then, it used to be that the main expense was the clothing that the mace would wear, and therefore Rabbi Gamliel did away with that practice. Everybody would afford and want to bury their krovim, and they wouldn't be embarrassed, and therefore would drink one of the extra 4 cups in honor of Rabbi Gamliel.